When you hear the word McKinsey, what do you think about? Prestigious? I mean, it is right. McKinsey is the oldest and the largest consulting firm. Mysterious? Yeah, that's probably also accurate. I mean, they're very hush-hush about the projects they do. You hear very vaguely what kind of clients they serve, what kind of industry they serve, but you would never know the details. So, what exactly does McKinsey do, and what kind of influence it has on the world? Those are the two questions that investigative journalists from the New York Times try to answer with their book, When McKinsey Comes to Town: The Hidden Influence of the World's Most Powerful Consulting Firm. Hello, this is Angie. Welcome back to my channel. I recently came across a very interesting book about McKinsey, the consulting company that I used to work for back in 2016. The book's title is When McKinsey Comes to Town. The authors of the book are investigative journalists from New York Times. They used about 14 case studies. They're all projects that McKinsey used to do, things from McKinsey's engagement with ICE to the opioid scandal, from the involvement with tobacco and vaping to the South Africa debacle. Essentially, they use those case studies to illustrate the hypocritical McKinsey ways of working, the magnitude of power that the firm has on the world, and the severe damage that it has done. So in today's video, I want to share actually some of my thoughts after I read the book. Before I continue with the video where I'm going to share my perspectives and thoughts, a quick disclaimer. The stuff that I'm about to share is purely based on my own experience, my own understanding of the firm. It is limited, I will be honest, because I've only worked at McKinsey for about 2.5 years. I've only worked in a limited number of industries as well as offices. Like the authors, it is going to be limited. And because my experience is unique to me, it will be very different from someone else's. So everyone's gonna have a different opinion about the book. And here's mine if you've decided to keep watching. A bit of background about McKinsey as a consulting firm. Founded in 1926, McKinsey is the oldest and largest consulting companies in the world. To the outside world, it is very prestigious yet mysterious.
From boardrooms to the White House and beyond, McKinsey's influence in business is virtually unparalleled.
It is quite possibly the most influential private institution on the planet.
The mysterious part comes from the firm's nature of work. Typically, consulting companies such as McKinsey serve very highly impact, very sensitive client projects. And typically there is very strict confidentiality around that. So we can't really share with the outside world what it is that we do. In addition, McKinsey also believes in client value first before everything else. And it should be the client that really takes the credit for all the impact that it has created. So historically, McKinsey had made a conscious decision to avoid the spotlight. We want the client to have all the attention, not us, which is why we kept a very low public profile. When a company is so secretive and mysterious, it is very natural to wonder, what does this company do? And this book is an attempt to answer that question. Overall, after reading through it, I think I really enjoyed the storytelling part of the book. I mean, it was very easy to understand. It provided a lot of context, a lot of the history. And I'm also a firm believer in that. I think investigative journalism is extremely important. And it's, in a way, a good thing for the New York Times journalists to investigate McKinsey, because after all, they were positive changes that come out of this. However, I did find the overall tone of this book to be very imbalanced, and I will dive into that. So first of all, let's talk about the unbalanced part. Why do I think the tone is very unbalanced? Well, again, keep in mind that this is based on my own experience, my understanding of the company, as well as after reading the book. A couple reasons why I think overall it's super imbalanced. First of all, the book tried really hard to draw implications from facts that are super strenuously connected, that are super far-fetched. It almost feels like they're saying, hey, we don't have the hard evidence, but here are the two pieces of individual facts that we're putting together. So you can guess what we want to say here. In chapter 11, the Entron Astros, the book described the scandal of the Houston Astros team, which is a baseball team, for trying to win via very shady methods during major league competitions. And it described how it was somehow as a result of the club's management's obsession around analytics-driven success strategy that is somehow heavily influenced by McKinsey. McKinsey's name did not appear in the report, and no evidence emerged linking to the scandal. How much McKinsey might have contributed to those decisions isn't known, but it is no secret that McKinsey met with the Astro scouts. But the firm's role in shaping the culture of Astro was undeniable. But how? I mean, let's just be honest. McKinsey is not the first or the only companies that are out there that are talking about the importance of analytics and then how much it is changing our world. How can you possibly blame this scandal on analytics and then also on McKinsey? This to me is extremely far-fetched. Second, the book also tried really hard to cast doubts around McKinsey's conflict of interest management process. Even though they don't have a shred of concrete evidence that McKinsey ever broke any confidentiality. One example the book brought up is, in chapter 5, befriending China's government. The book mentioned when McKinsey advised Chinese communications, it was also studying how the US Army could reduce costs in sustaining America's industrial base for manufacturing ammunition. In chapter 6, Guarding the Gates of Hades, when talking about tobacco company, they mentioned that not only did McKinsey serve the tobacco company Altria, they also served the FDA around regulating tobacco. In other words, McKinsey playing both offense and defense, a dubious practice that has long remained secret. This is something that I really want to clarify for the company, for McKinsey. Based on my experience, McKinsey takes confidentiality extremely seriously. Yes, it is true. I would not deny, and I don't think anybody's denying that, there will be times where McKinsey could be serving competitors, where there will be times where McKinsey could be serving both the regulators and the regulatees in the case of the tobacco case, right, with Austria and FDA. However, the firm really do a good job of setting up a Chinese firewall between different teams. So even as a McKinsey consultant, you typically have really no idea who the clients are all over the world. And even if you do know who the clients are, you also wouldn't know what specific problems or projects that the other teams are doing for maybe the competitors or the other side. So this separation of information is kept really well, and it is something that McKinsey and also a lot of the other consulting firms have been operating for such a long time. It is the reason why clients historically have trusted big consulting companies like McKinsey with the confidentialities, with all the high impact, super secretive work. So I really do believe that it is unfair for these journalists, without having the full context, to come in and say, hey, we're just listing on the facts, right? McKinsey are serving both sides, without any concrete evidence that McKinsey ever broke confidentiality or broke any rules around this. And the third piece is the author's disapproval or accusation of McKinsey's decision to serve countries that are essentially outside of the US, countries such as in China or the Middle East or Southeast Asia. Because they are authoritarian countries, you should not be involved at all, period. How is that even fair? First of all, consulting is a business. And like all the private and public companies out there, they're also motivated by, profit, by growth. So while it's okay for companies such as Apple or Boeing to do business with those countries that are on the disapproval list, it is not okay for a consulting company to do the same. Let's not have any double standards here, please. Second of all, can we please stop taking such a black and white rules about all the countries that are out there? Let's please stop putting labels out there. Hey, you are a bad country, so we don't play with you. But here is the list of all the good countries that you can have a relationship with. Can we please not make everything political? I mean, even take a step back here. US obviously have its own rules about sanctioning countries. And these countries that are just mentioned in the book are totally outside of the sanctioning rule. I mean, consulting companies such as McKinsey are not breaking any rules here. And third of all, why can't we consider consulting services similar to knowledge sharing? And what is wrong with knowledge sharing across the borders? We all know that what drives and propels innovation is competition, is knowledge share, not closing yourself out to the outside world. All right, what are the positives? What I like about this book? Well, as I mentioned before, I really liked the storytelling of the book. I mean, it was very easy to read. It definitely was written really well. Every single story, the book did a very good job of explaining what the context was, what the history was, what are the different parties that are involved to eventually get to their, final conclusion. Yeah, so I definitely enjoyed the writing piece. And the second part that I really want to emphasize on is I do believe that investigative journalism is extremely important. And in this case, it also propelled McKinsey and probably other consulting firms to make positive changes. So many times we've seen, companies make mistakes trying to hide them. It is always the investigative journalists that took the time, took the resource, took the risk to try to dig out the truth, to propel positive changes, to hold the companies accountable. And I believe that's what the two journalists were trying to do here. Because traditionally consulting companies, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, they're so private, so secretive, so mysterious. They're not really under the spotlight like your S&P 500 companies. So how do you make sure that, these consulting companies are actually held accountable for the actions that they take or for the recommendations that they make? And in this case, it is because of those investigative journalism piece, McKinsey did reflect on its involvement with some of the project and our clients. We should have recognized the unfolding epidemic earlier, stopped our work with manufacturers sooner, and been swifter in implementing additional controls for our client services and selection approach. This is Bob Stanfield, McKinsey's current managing partner's comment on reflecting our involvement with the opioid manufacturers. And as a result, McKinsey implemented a super strict client selection process and also invested very heavily to upgrade the risk, legal, compliance capabilities, policies, and processes. I mean, these are all really good lessons to learn, not just for McKinsey, but for the broader consulting industries that are out there that are trying to do the right things to serve the clients, but also making sure that they are being held accountable for their actions, for their recommendations. At the end of the day, McKinsey or consulting companies at large, they aren't evil, as the authors said it themselves.
Are there more times that they live up to their values that they don't? I mean, are the stories you're reporting the exception or the rule?
They're the exception, but an important exception.
I think the key question here is how can you make sure that they're held accountable for the actions, for the recommendations that they make, given the secretive nature of their work. All right, this is it for today. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in reading the book as well, I have included an Amazon link down below, so feel free to check it out. And please share your thoughts after you read the book as well. Until next time, bye!